when you first started doing all this and you had that, you were writing that first book, um, and you have the doubt and you're picking up, I'm 33, right? So you're late 20s, early 30s. Um, when you were locked into that story, I mean, was there anything that was going to get in your way from finishing that first book? I mean, were you just like overtaking? Were you just kind of like, how did that first book really come about? And then once you had that done, did you feel more freedom after that to continue writing?
Well, I think just like everybody else, I've got a couple of failed experiments in the drawer
Definitely.
or in the landfill or wherever. And I would say, my first novel was not a first novel for a while. I stopped and started a few things. And I was in the habit, like I started out writing short stories and trying to
Okay.
publish stories. But I wanted to get away from that. Like I wanted to do novels. Like that's kind of why I got into it. So when I first started trying to write novels, I would get to like that 50 or 70 page mark and I would just hit the wall because I wasn't like, I hadn't trained, so to speak,
Yeah.
for a novel yet. I was trained in the short story.
Yeah.
But I can remember like, once I finally said, I'm going to write a full length manuscript, I don't give a damn what happens. When I get stuck, I'm just going to make something else happen. I'm
Boom.
just going to like walk somebody into the story that who hasn't been there. I'm going to do anything, but I'm going to
Oh,
make it.
story. It's fiction. You can do whatever you
That's
want.
right. You bring in a gorilla for Christ's sake. Doesn't matter. Do something. And that's kind of the lesson I learned. Do something. Mix things up. Bring in another
Yeah.
character. Add dynamic to the story. Bring in some storyline that hadn't been there before. Let's layer this thing. And once I did that, I finally made it through like a novel manuscript. It was like however many words, 60,000 words. But I felt like, God, I did it. I did it. And I think it's okay. I mean, and it was okay, and like I said, it's in a landfill now, but I was at least,
Oh, so that was not the first book that you would go on to publish.
no, 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 no.
Ah, so you wrote an entire novel and literally threw it away.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Everyone needs to hear that. Okay,
Oh
good.
yeah, absolutely. I probably wrote a couple of, quarter length novels
Yeah.
and threw them away before I wrote a novel and threw it away before I finally like hit on an idea that I was like, okay, I feel like this is different. And
Okay.
I felt it was different for a couple of reasons. Like I was more trained and kind of seasoned for the longer form.
Yeah, yeah.
During all that writing and all that throwing away, I was getting better. You
Okay.
know, I was continuing to get better. My sentences were getting better. I was continuing to read too, which also makes you a better writer.
I didn't want to cut you off. That you said it right. I mean, you have to read in order to be a good writer, and also reading takes time. I
Yeah,
dedicate 45 minutes of my day. It's the first thing I do every day. I don't
yeah,
have children, right?
yeah,
It's the first thing I do every day, and I know it just you have to read.
yeah. It's
Right.
smart. I mean, it's like if you wanted to learn how to be a chef, you would watch people cook,
Exactly.
and you would. I mean, you don't just you don't just wake up knowing how to write.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I'm on a big. I'm going through all. I'm trying to finish every Cormac McCarthy, but I'm late to the game. And you know, it's just like I read his stuff, and he writes a novel in a sentence,
Yeah,
and reading. I know by reading that, I'm only going to become a better
right.
writer. No, I
That's
can become a shittier writer by reading him. And yeah, I think people kind of again, I'm so new. You know a lot more authors than I do, but yeah, I'm curious how many authors really read a lot. If they have the time to read, maybe they just don't
right.
have the time. If does Danielle Steele read every day? I don't know. I know she has a giant house in San
I would
Francisco.
say no, but that's okay. Well, I think what happens is like my experience of the last few years, and like I rarely read a novel from beginning to end when I'm working on something because my fear is that I'll begin to mimic that voice or I'll
Correct.
start to
Yeah.
list stuff in a subconscious way. What I find myself doing a lot now as a reader is, well, McCarthy's one of them, but I have, 6, 8, 10 writers that I really love, and I do a lot of rereading. Like I'll just pick up something off the shelf, open up to
Yeah.
wherever, just read 2 or 3
Yeah.
chapters to
Yeah.
get the flow of the language that I love, like to
Yeah.
see how like image driven they are, just to keep it like going, flowing through your
Oh
veins
yeah.
while you're working. And
That's
I
cool.
find that to be like really helpful. It can be really inspiring too, I think, to realize that you can open up one of these novels anywhere and something's happening and you can see it because it's being created very visually,
Mhm,
and it's interesting,
mhm.
which is like every page of a novel has to be. There is no waiting. People kind of think when they start writing novels like, well, I'm saving this for later.
Nope.
One of the things I learned was like, why the hell would I save anything? And when I learned to take that thing that was on page 50 in that first draft and I put it on page 12, like my novels became much more dynamic and much more like gripping right away.